You are listening to the Free to Be Mindful podcast, which invites you along on a journey to learn of mindful living, grow in mental health, and inspire through personal growth. In a world where we can often feel much stress and overwhelm, this podcast provides bite-sized tips and real talk conversations, empowering you to embrace mindfulness and nurture your full potential. I'm your host, Vanessa De Jesus Guzman, licensed therapist, retired educator, entrepreneur, and mom of two. I'm passionate about helping busy moms reduce the overwhelm and to live life intentionally without losing their, well, here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 236 of the Free to Be Mindful podcast. I hope that you're feeling good, looking good, and doing better in this world than you were yesterday. My friends, today's guest is one that just by the name of what she does, you may think, well, how does this fit into Vanessa's message of mindfulness? But I loved this conversation and everything that Kristi brought to the table and reminders of how to integrate that in our lives. The guest name is Kristi Kandel, and Kristi is a leading real estate developer with nearly 20 years of experience, specializing in public-private partnership that transform neglected properties into thriving community spaces and empowering communities nationwide. You see how it doesn't seem like it's going to fit in, but it totally, totally does. In this episode, Kristi shares of her humble beginnings, of the experiences that she's had in between, and now as being the head of her company and by building a life of purpose by redeveloping neglected properties in the community. And I would go as far as saying that it's not only redeveloping neglected properties, but also her focus is redeveloping herself and sharing how others can redevelop themselves no matter where they've come from and no matter where they're going. I hope you enjoy Kristi's story as much as I did. Kristi, welcome to the Free to Be Mindful podcast. We're so glad you're with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, we heard a little bit in your intro about you, but I'd love to give you the space because you have such interesting stories about yourself to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I currently live in Southwest Florida and spend my winters in Lake Tahoe snowboarding and skiing. But I actually grew up in a small farm town in Ohio, about 2,500 people. I like to say 3 stoplights, no fast food, and about 100 churches. Uh,
Wowzers.
so it started in a small town in Ohio and ended up finding my way in the world. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, which is so interesting to me because I like to say I'm from the sixth borough of New York City, although I totally live in Jersey, but we have the better view of looking at the New York City skyline. And it's so urban and it's so big. Like my graduating class was like 800 people in high school. So to hear a small town, I saw your face there. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can watch Chrissy's face there too. To hear a small town and then my experience is so opposite. It's so interesting to see kind of like where you came from and like what you do in your life now.
Yeah, I think our graduating class was 80 something. Our whole high school was under 400. So, yes, when I hear of
Wow.
these large classes where you don't know everyone's name and their
Right.
whole personal life and backstory, I go, ooh, I wonder how that would have been.
Yeah, really, really big. Really big, but you can stay, under a rock if you want to, because not everybody knows your story.
Yeah, that must be nice. Although I found myself after living in a small town in Ohio, every community I've lived in across the country since has been smaller.
Smaller and smaller. But yet, in your professional life, you do real estate, which is like the opposite, like leading towards growth.
Exactly, exactly. We do a lot of revitalizing communities and empowering locals to be the ones who are that developers. So it's awesome to be able to go in and transform those older neglected buildings or properties and work with the locals to be the ones making that difference. So yeah.
And I really appreciate that as far as like working with the local people because usually, like you stated last time we spoke, there's only like one person sometimes that like owns everything and builds everything. And in my area, that's what I see as well. We live like in the top of it's like a top of a mountain that overlooks again the New York City skyline. And it's like more and more they're like chipping into the mountain. And I'm like, where's the base going? Eventually it seems like we're all gonna fall right into the Hudson River. But typically it's like one person that like owns everything. And here you are like pushing women to get into these roles and really expand their force and build in their communities.
Yeah, it's just I found I accidentally lucked into real estate development, my first job out of college in Florida. So I graduated in college in Ohio and said, yo, I want quality of life. I'm moving to Florida, North Carolina, or California. And California seemed too far and too expensive. North Carolina seemed too much like Ohio. So I said, Florida it is. But I ended up working for a sign company who was putting up the exterior building and ground signs for CVS Pharmacy.
Oh,
And I started and of course, there's a CVS and Walgreens on every corner of Florida.
everywhere.
So tons of development everywhere. And one day I just looked at one of the developers who was working with them and said, yo, Eric, what's it take to be a developer? And luckily, they were a smaller company in the Clearwater, Florida area. And I had been auditioning to work with them. They saw my work ethic. And so he said, for us, it's the right person. So I said, great, when do I start?
There
So
you go.
thankfully, that turned into 3 weeks later, I started working with them. 2 weeks into that, I actually got a call from one of their leading managers and Eric, who were in California doing market research for one of our clients. And they said, hey, can you help us out? And since back between my junior and senior year of high school, I had the chance to go to California for a month. So in my head, I went, whoa, there's an opportunity in California. I'm all in. So I spent the day working on Florida projects. I worked later helping them on California projects and ended up actually opening our Orange County, California office in 2010 with that developer company. And yeah, I got my crash course in building, it was Family Dollars and CVS pharmacies. And eventually, fast forward to 2015, I had the courage to finally start my own company, and the rest is history.
That is so amazing. And before we go into your own company, because I love to hear that, especially like women empowerment, like finding your place and then like just sort of skyrocketing off. I'm sure your experience in your small towns growing up had really helped you in order to get where you are now. So tell us a little bit of that small town living and kind of like how you got your ground and your footing in order to then be CEO.
Yeah, I mean, part of being in a small town and growing up incredibly poor, it was one of those that the entrepreneurial bug was always in me. So I knew that if I wanted something, I had to find a way to make money to make it happen.
Mm.
So whether it was dollar bags of candy, making beaded necklaces and bracelets, taking the leaves on the trees and creating a bike path and charging the neighborhood kids to ride it, I was all about that stuff. So that was a huge thing for me. And my mom had told me, she's like, I know we don't have a lot of money, but you can do and be anything that you want. And I was naive and young enough to believe that that was the case. So I literally
Why
thought
not?
I could do it. So I just went all in and said, hey, if I want this computer, I talked to the bank manager and I said, sir, on Saturdays, and I'm going to date myself, on Saturdays, when everyone's coming in to cash their checks, can I sit out front with this booth to sell these dollar bags of candy and get my laptop computer? And yeah, that happened and that people used to do that. And it was a small town community and vibe that was close knit that really actually played a huge role in development in California because when we were going out there with the Family Dollars, that was just after '08 when the real estate market just crashed.
Mm.
And we were building these Family Dollars in towns that didn't have grocery stores, that they didn't have, a Target or Walmart, any way to get supplies. And they really were a place where it created jobs for the locals. And it also at the time provided much needed supplies and groceries to where they didn't have to drive an hour or two to get somewhere.
Wow.
And I remember working with these city officials, I'm coming from LA, we're city slickers, and I'm thinking, wait, this is all about people and relationships. And I know from being in a small town how we thought of city slickers. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so when I would come into these communities, I would I would dress like they did. I would talk like they did. I would relate to my farming community in Ohio to their farming community in the Central Valley in California.
Okay.
And that was a huge role because it helped the community go, you might be an outside developer, but you understand us. And there's
Yeah,
so many times in life that actually takes me back to a story as a kid, but there's so many times in life where we just want to know that we matter, that we mean something, that people care about what we're doing, that they're not just trying to make another buck. There were two times when I was a kid that stands out. And there was one winter, super cold and snowy, and we had my parents and us four kids, and we didn't have the money for the jackets or the boots. And different community members actually came together and they helped us get the winter supplies that we needed. And I just remember thinking, wow, like we mattered so much that these people looked out for us and they took care of us. Like that was
that's sweet.
incredible. Like we deserve to be here too. Like this is awesome. And then there was another time we came back from church and someone had left groceries on our porch and they didn't leave a note. They weren't trying to get any notoriety and
Right.
they left us groceries because we needed it. And I just remember thinking, wow, like again, we matter.
Yeah,
And what they don't know is how many times that has played a role in my life and paying it forward. So, as messed up as our world is out there and as overwhelming as it can seem, don't underestimate the power that you can have in one person's life that'll create a ripple effect to others.
absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, for being vulnerable and sharing of your backgrounds and your upbringing. And that's so special in so many ways. And tying the two together, what I heard you say is really having like self-awareness of like where you came from and then where you are now. But then in your story of like your work, having that social awareness of like not trying to show, come into the small town or and kind of like come, yeah, the city swag. From like fancy California and things like that, but really seeing how is it that you fit in with people and not bending yourself. So I'm not hearing that you've lost yourself and really try to, like shape shift into something that you weren't, but just understanding the setting where you're in order to show people that you understand and that they matter. Would you say that's correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and how you've learned that from a young age, having people be so giving and then knowing that you matter there as well, regardless of how much money you had or didn't have. And it sounds like that really had an impact on your family.
It really did. And it helped me, especially like the more I got into development. And, I'd be in Manhattan Beach, California with millionaires and billionaires, and they'd have all this money and they weren't happy. And,
Mm.
coming from where I came from, we didn't need money to be happy. I didn't know I was poor until I was much older and be like, oh, that's why this stuff happened. Uh, but being able to fast forward and see that money does not make you happy.
Right.
It, you've got to be good inside first. And then it can allow you to help take care of people and to empower people and to give back, but it's not what fulfills you.
Absolutely. And rubbing shoulders with these billionaires, what do you think, in your opinion, is it that they weren't like having everything at their disposal and then not being happy? What do you think happens? Like, what do you think is it that's missing that they didn't have that fulfillment in their lives?
Fulfillment starts with you being good with who you are inside, being authentic,
Mm,
being yourself. And yeah, you've got to go through that self-discovery first. Because if you're good inside, then you're totally fine on the outside. But yeah, it starts inside. And that's what they were all missing and lacking. And it became very clear. So that's literally what made me go, wait, why am I climbing this corporate ladder to this place that I thought I wanted? Like
right.
I put the ladder in the wrong spot. I'm climbing the wrong way.
Yeah, and I need listeners to go back and rewind to hear again what you just said, because fulfillment comes from the inside. And so many times we find ourselves like catching and, racing to get to what, or trying to keep up with the Joneses and why, when we really need to turn inward to see what's happening in our hearts and our minds. And are we happy with ourselves before we go and chase this thing that sometimes the ladder's in the wrong place? I like the way you said that.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, and so I'm 37. It actually was a couple months ago that I discovered self-love for the first time,
Wow.
because I had always been striving and achieving and thinking, if I get one more thing, then I'm good enough. If I get one more
Mm.
thing, then I'm okay, or I matter, or I've done it. And I just realized, I'm like, wait, I'm okay just the way I am. I've always been okay. And it doesn't matter what new challenge life throws my way. I'm good inside, and that allows me to then pause and then choose how I respond and to face each challenge in the, head on. And it's empowering to be like, whoa, what all it took was me being good in here. And now life it's like, this is the easy button. This is the cheat code that we've been looking for in every other way. Oh, I just gotta be okay. So yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me laugh because like you said, cheat code, the things that take you the farthest in self-fulfillment are really the simplest thing. And everybody's always looking for something so complicated and for some like, I don't know, like some magic way to get ahead or magic wand. And really it does start with yourself, but we often ignore those simple things because we're like, no, it can't be that. That's too easy. It can't be that. Like it has to be something else. Everybody has this thing that is like outside of myself when really you have it in you all along. And you've done a lot of work on yourself, but you also engage in a lot of mindful living activities in order to kind of know what you like and do what you love in order to propel you forward with this joy that you have within you. So, can you share some of those things that you've done for yourself?
Yeah. Well, so my journey in the deep dive actually started in 2017 when my uncle he was in stage 4 of breast cancer of all things. But he hadn't taken the time to go to EMDR therapy, and
Mm.
he did a deep dive internally, and amazing, incredible man. But once he did that and he became good from the inside out, he wasn't saying, "Oh, Kristi, you need to go do this." He was living it, and I could feel it in his actions. And I saw the change in a 58-year-old man. I'm like, wait, you can teach an old dog new tricks? What? And I noticed the change in the way he was living. And here he is dying of cancer. And he's the happiest and the most at peace that he's ever been. I was
Wow.
like, oh, I want some. So it made me in 2017 go, I want to get an EMDR therapist, and I want to start doing a deep dive and digging in. And it's been a journey. I mean, that was 2017 and it was 2024 when I got to self-love. And that's the thing. Therapy is an amazing tool. I like to say it's like an onion, and you just unpeel the layers and you just keep going and you just keep
Yes,
refining yourself, and there will always be a new layer to peel off, and it'll all happen in
absolutely.
its own time.
I love that. That reminds me of Shrek. Like it's like an onion. You just keep going to go to the layers underneath. And I wanted to remind listeners and viewers, if you go back to episode 195, we spoke to therapist Kathy Acosta, who is an EMDR therapist, and she talks about what EMDR is and how it helps you, in case you wanted more information on EMDR. But yes, it is a mode of therapy that really helps and does great things for people who have experienced a lot. And you saw that change in your uncle.
Yes, I mean, this was a man who did a wildlife, had a poker circuit from Vegas to California to Alaska, had it create stories that were so crazy about his time in Alaska that I didn't believe it until I went up there. And then I met his old poker buddies and
How
Flapper and
funny.
Steve, and saw the areas. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this was real. So yeah. And then he did a complete, and he was a great man, but when he did a 180, he was a great and fulfilled and complete, and was authentic and comfortable in his own skin. So that did wonders for me. So doing that, and then over the years, Ohio wasn't so much into the meditation and the woo-woo stuff, but Southern
Mm,
California really was.
all
Uh,
about it.
and it got me into, what's this meditation stuff? What's this mindful practice? What's this yoga? And I started incorporating different pieces of that along the way, to where now every single morning I start off and I do a meditation. I'll read my gratitude list. I'll add 3 things that I had from the day before, because so many times we go through and we rush through each day and it might be overwhelming, and we stop to realize there was actually some really cool things that happened the day before to be grateful for. And just writing those down make you go, huh, yeah, okay. And so it starts the day on a fresh note. Then I'll do a workout. I'll take my dog on a walk to the beach and back. And then since I've taken care of me inside, now I'm able to go face the world and go do all the outward facing things.
And what a difference that can make once you're already on the right track, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because then you're not jonesing throughout the day to go, oh, I've got to squeeze that workout in, or, oh, how do I find 10 minutes to meditate? And what I found recently, I added in two new things. But what I found is that once I take care of me, I have more of a clear head to where I can do the things that I need to in work, but then I almost have more time in the day. So
Yeah.
I've been mixing in different 30 minutes of silence, or I have a 20-minute manifestation that I'll do, and I'll mix those in throughout the week. And it's nice because I know when I need it now. And so it's just being self-aware to go, yep, it's time.
Yeah, you almost train your brain to be on the lookout. It's kind of like when your throat knows you're thirsty, and you're just like, all
Yep.
right, I need something to drink because I'm thirsty. It's the same idea as training your brain, like, wait, I need that time. And I want to point out because something that I hear very often, especially I'm going to say from busy moms, is, well, I don't have the time to do this, right? So there is something fantastic to knowing, okay, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have a workout and do some gratitude practice and take a dog on a walk, and I know that not everybody has that
Yes.
space all of the time to do that. However, you can also incorporate these things in the things that you do every day. So you don't have to take, and then not that you do, but you don't have to take 5 hours to do this
Yes.
thing and then start your day. You can take even 30 seconds when you open your eyes and just think of if you can't think of five or three, what's one thing that you're grateful for in that day, and then get you going. What in the busy madness of like getting people ready in the morning, let's say before you go to school, or if you're a busy executive or own your own business before you go to work, just think about think about an intention. What am I going to do today to make my life better? What am I going to do today to make someone else's life better, or to have greater gratitude, especially towards people and things that challenge me? And taking out these small things in the space where you're already living make as much of an impact as you're doing when you have like this morning routine. So no one is better, no one
Yes.
aspect is better than the other. They both have its great benefits. It's just that we have to be intentional about integrating it within our lives and not just saying, well, what's that magic pill again that's going to make me it's going to make me happy.
Exactly. And it can be as simple. One of my friends, she has her two kids, and as they're getting ready in the morning, they're eating breakfast. It's, hey, what was one good thing that happened yesterday? And one thing that you're looking forward to today, to where it's teaching a gratitude to your kids and as your family and just putting them in a habit early. So,
As simple as that.
yeah.
Absolutely. And now you take out that time in the morning, but you also do a lot of awesome sport related activities, a lot of movement in your life, which I like to say that's a big part of mindful living because you're mindful while you're doing all of these really cool activities. So, what are the things that bring you joy?
Everything outdoors. I absolutely love every sport. I played tons growing up because we basically had a sports team in our house. But I found that beach volleyball in Southern California was the first sport I ever enjoyed practicing.
So cool.
So had a little stint there of going semi-pro, but realized you can't make money doing that. So that was a great hobby. Still play beach volleyball 2 or 3 times a week, but for fun now, not nearly as competitive. Snowboarding, I taught myself how to ski. Definitely boating. I love taking my dog out, putting her shark life jacket on and taking off and going around. So honestly, if it's anything outdoors, I found that I am barefoot a lot of the time because
Mm,
it's whether it's in the sand or if it's just wherever, and I like the feeling of feeling the earth and being grounded and just
yep.
so I get so rejuvenated and refreshed outside. So yeah.
That's so awesome. And I think that the way that you take care of yourself then comes out on the success of your business and all of these things that you're doing now. So let us know on the tail end now, what are the things that you're up to?
Yeah, so I have been a real estate developer for nearly 20 years, working on projects across the country. And about a year and a half ago, I was really searching, going, I've created these self-managing companies in different areas around real estate, property management, buying businesses. And it made me go, what do I really want? Like, what would get me out of bed in the morning that if I never made a dime, I would like, it would still get me out of bed in the morning. And that's when I realized we do a terrible job in our industry of helping others realize that it doesn't have to be that one guy in our community or those two guys who build and own everything. And we need to get the message out there, and we need to share that, hey, an ordinary person like me from a small town can figure out how to be a developer and to build that roadmap. So I created two courses. I created a blueprint to just give people the outline of, hey, here's how the communities or the buildings in your community were formed. And then I have a full-blown accelerator for people who are like, yeah, I want to be that person, to take them through that process. And now it's just a matter of getting out there and helping educate people to let them know that you can do that in your town, and you're actually uniquely qualified because you know what
You
your
know your
town is
town.
missing.
Yeah.
So it's not, you don't need millions of dollars. It's not that hard. So really just working to get our message out there to share with people that you can be that developer in your town. And that is another way to create a different future for yourself and your family that isn't just a W-2 and isn't, there's my biggest thing, while my dad, I love him to death. He did anything he needed to do to make sure there was enough money to have a roof on our head and food on the table, but his job is miserable. And
Mm.
like, when we spend so much of our time in that, it just really is my passion to give people another way, to be like, hey, it does involve risk, but I promise it's worth it. So it's just giving people another path, another opportunity to try and, have a better quality of life.
So good. And that's why you're such a great guest to have on the podcast, because what I'm about is really reducing the overwhelm in whatever way it means for you, right? Whether it be everyday living or maybe even in your employment or whatever it is, finding joy and living life intentionally. I think
Yeah.
our life is too short on this earth, and we deserve and have the right to enjoy it as much as we can. So when we can find joy in our places of employment and then joy in life and really live mindfully and intentionally, we get happy people like you who not perfect all the time, but have done the work in order to be where you are and enjoy life, all while giving back to others, which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and definitely not perfect. A work in progress always until the day I move on. But yeah, yeah.
So good. So you were talking about the courses, and I believe you said you have something for us.
Yeah, yeah. If anyone's interested in just learning more about real estate development, the blueprint course, it's $200, but we've got a discount code, so free to be mindful, and then that's 50% off. If you're just curious, like, how was my community formed, or why are people doing it a certain way? Even if you're not interested in being a developer, it kind of just gives you insight into what's out
Yeah.
there. But then also so I live in Southwest Florida. 2 years ago, Hurricane Ian came through and my community was ground zero. So 90% of the island was incredibly devastated, and we still are. It took us probably 9 months to get, a grocery store back. It took me 3 months to get power and water to even
Wow.
move back home. So it's a work in progress, but it's an awesome story of the resiliency of people, to where we can face incredible adversity and we're still okay. It was really incredible to watch in my own recovery, to figure out, because it was a massive community loss, that not only did we lose businesses and structures, but we lost our neighbors. And
Mm,
it it really didn't take that long, though, because I had done some of the work with therapy and with mindfulness, to see, I think there might be a silver lining. And just simple things like walking down the street, and everyone who has our dogs, we'd wave and say hi, but the conversations became more meaningful. And
right.
you realize that you shouldn't take the small things for granted. So I kept a journal of the whole experience, and I wrote a book. So there will be a link that you guys can have if you want a free download, just to see our story of resilience and recovery. And it's really hope, because it helps you realize that we come together as a community when things get tough. And pretty empowering to see that.
So beautiful. You gave me chills as you were talking about it. And thank you for sharing those links with everybody. They'll be placed in the show notes. And what I really hope that people get from that is that you don't have to wait for a tragedy in order to make those meaningful connections and to really make the most of each moment, that you can do that in your everyday life. And let's not wait for that big thing to strike and happen, but let's do it intentionally each and every day. Kristi, I think you're amazing. And one last question for you. If you could be remembered for one thing in life, what would that one thing be?
That I helped create a ripple effect that changed people's lives, that I paid it forward, all the things that happened, and that as a result, so many other lives were able to improve, and just that they found a little bit of hope and to keep pushing through to the next day.
Yeah. And from such humble beginnings to awesome experiences, and now continuing it to pay it forward, I thank you for the work that you're doing, and I wish you all the best and continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristi, so much for coming on to the podcast, for sharing your stories, for sharing space, and for reminding us the importance of carving out time for yourself and being intentional, whether it is 30 minutes or whether it's 30 seconds. My friends, for today's guided meditation, I invite you to really let the message resonate. Kristi talked about gratitude, about living intentionally, about not having much, but finding joy in what there is, and then about scaling and growing. Think about which one of those pieces resonated for you, whether because you do it well or whether because you need to do a little bit more of that. And then I invite you to turn your attention from inward to outward and see how you can share that thing with other people. Whether it's a conversation, a text, perhaps a prayer, or a night out. See how you can share the concepts of gratitude, of living intentionally, of carving out time for yourself, and of growing as a person. Remember, as always, that in a world where you are free to be anything that you want to be, you are always free to be mindful. Catch you next week. Free to Be Mindful exists because of viewers and listeners like you. If you're enjoying the podcast or felt this week's show resonated with you, please take a moment to leave a rate and review on the platform where you catch your favorite shows. That quick and easy act allows me to see what you're enjoying so I can deliver more personalized content that focuses on learning, growing, and inspiring. It also helps others find the podcast too. Don't forget to subscribe so you can listen along next week. And if you can do me the favor and share this podcast on social or with a friend who may benefit from the message shared today, that would be truly appreciated. In the meantime, I welcome you to follow me on social media across all platforms at Counselor V. De Jesus for more fun content. And remember, my friends, in a world where you are free to be anything that you want to be, you are always free to be mindful. Catch you next week.